We're going to be looking at the verb to be today. In English, the verb to be, we have the conjugations in the present tense of am, are, is, and are. So I am, you are, he is, we are, and they are. Well, in Spanish, there's two different ways to say I am. There's two different ways to say we are. One verb that means to be is ser, and the other verb that means to be is estar. So what we're going to be looking at today is how do you know when to use soy, which means I am and comes from ser, and how do you know when to use estoy, which means I am and comes from estar. What you're going to be looking at is what is the situation? What is it exactly that you're talking about? And that will help you make your decision. So we're going to look at the reasons why you would use a form of ser to say am, is, are, etc. The verb ser comes from the same Latin word that we get the English word essence from. So if you think of the word essence, what is it that makes something or someone what they are? And that really helps understand the first reason for using a form of ser to say am, is, or are when you're talking about identity. Who or what something is. Whether you're saying a person is tall or funny or Mexican or white or a woman, even the profession is considered to be part of your identity. And in Spanish, they consider being a student, a profession. So all these things that make you who you are, here's an example. He's tall and very funny. We're going to use es from ser. Él es alto y muy chistoso. I'm from the United States. Well, that talks about your nationality or your origin. You being from the US determines your identity. It makes you who you are. So soy de los Estados Unidos. A second reason for using ser is when you're saying when something takes place. So that includes telling the date, whether it be the day, the year, the month, even the season, or the time, the exact hour and minutes. All of these things talk about things that take place. So to say, it's Friday, right? You'd say es, which comes from ser, viernes, no? Or sí. Sometimes teachers will explain the differences between ser and estar, as ser is all talking about things that are permanent and estar is talking about things that are temporary. That analogy doesn't work for everything though. It doesn't quite work, especially when you talk about the date and the day and the season. Because if you look at it as permanent and temporary, you're like, well, the date is changing every day. From minute to minute it changes, so why would you use a form of ser? So forget that temporary permanent analogy and instead think of when it's something that takes place, you need a form of ser. Telling time. This we'll learn later, but you would say son las 5:30 de la tarde. They are the 5.5 hours of the afternoon. When you're talking about to whom something or someone belongs, you will also use a form of ser. So possession, that's my pen. She's my partner, talking about relationships. He's my dad. So is he your dad? A form of ser that we would use, the form of ser we would use is es. Es él tu padre o tu papá? The conjugations of ser you already have seen, but here's a reminder. Soy, eres, es, somos, and son. Eres and es are sometimes hard to remember that they belong to ser since they do not start with an s like the other forms do. When we get to talking about the conjugations of estar, I'll give you a hint for how you can remember that these belong to ser and not estar. So now the verb estar. The verb estar comes from the same Latin word that we get the English word status from. And if you think of someone's Facebook status, they're usually posting things about where they are and how they're feeling and what their physical condition is. So think about Facebook status when you think of estar. So physical condition, for example, is a reason for using a form of estar to say am, is, or are. He's sick. Él está enfermo. Emotions, feelings would also be described using a form of estar. Because once again, it's your status. Ella está de mal humor. And also location. Where are they? ¿Dónde están ellos? You can see that the reasons for using estar are a lot less complex than the reasons for using ser. And so I often give this hint to students. Instead of trying to remember all the reasons that you should use ser and memorize those, just think of the star in the sky picture that I am going to be showing you in class. The star in the sky is a star with a broken arm. He's got a black eye and he's crying. So estar and star, how you're going to remember that is the location, the stars in the sky. He's sad. And why is he sad? Because of his physical condition. He has a broken arm. He has a black eye. Here are the forms of estar. Estoy, estás, está, estamos, están. Notice that all the forms of estar start with est. So sometimes students get confused and they think that eres comes from estar and that es comes from estar because they start with e. But they don't start with est, so they don't belong to estar. And you can tell from the conjugations of estar and ser that they're both irregular verbs. All right, let's try some practice. I want you to look at the sentences here and see if you can figure out just would you use a form of ser or would you use a form of estar to say the is in he's not here today. Him not being here today, when we think of the star in the sky picture, and let me go back up here and write this out for you. In case you weren't in class and didn't see that star in the sky picture, you can at least write this down for reference. The star is in the sky. That's location. And he's sad, emotions, because he has a broken arm and black eye. Physical condition. All right, let's go back then to our examples. My dad is a pastor. So instead of trying to remember all the reasons for ser, look at it this way. Let's analyze it this way. Are we talking about a location? No. Is your dad being a pastor emotions? No. Is it a physical condition? No. Then, if it's not one of those three, you need to use a form of ser. And it's ser because you're talking about his identity, specifically his profession. So estar here because of location. Ser here because your dad, being a pastor, is his profession, part of his identity. They're running to Dutton and are very tired. So, thinking of our star in the sky picture, being very tired. Is that location? No. Is it an emotion? No. Is it a physical condition? Sí, it is. So you would use a form of estar. I'm going to let you think about those, give you a minute or so, and then come back and give the answers to those. All right. My partner is nervous for the quiz. Being nervous is not a location. It's not a physical condition, but it is an emotion. So you would use a form of estar to say is. I'm not lazy. This one was part of your pronunciation words for last chapter. No soy perezoso or no soy perezosa if you're a girl. And you would need a form of ser here because we're not talking about location, we're not talking about emotions, and we're not talking about a physical condition. We're talking about a personality trait, something that makes the person who they are. In this case, what they are not. The movie is boring. It's not location, it's not physical condition, and it's not emotion. You're talking about the identity of the movie. Ser. We're bored. Bored is an emotion, so you'd want a form of estar. So notice that in Spanish, if we would say the movie is boring, la película es aburrida, and we are bored, estamos aburridos. The word aburrido doesn't change at all from boring to bored. I mean, they're matching, they're agreeing with what they're describing, but there's no different word like we have in English. What changes is the verb. And the verb that you use with aburrido will determine if it means boring, here we're talking about a personality trait, or an emotion. All right, I'll give you a minute or so to think about the next few. All right, let's look at these examples. Are you guys from Spain? Being from Spain is not a location because you're not saying, are you guys in Spain? And it's not emotion and it's not physical condition. So it's got to be a form of ser. You're talking about somebody's identity, specifically their nationality. So, son ustedes de España? It's his book. No, not emotion, not physical condition, and not location. It belongs to him. You're showing a relationship. So a form of ser. It's his book. Es, because the it is the understood subject. Su libro. He's in the country and is hunting. Well, if he's in the country, there we're talking about location. So, él está en el campo y caza. South is on 68th Street. That's location. Está, form of